Hello everyone, my name is John Bussard. I'm an HPE Business Transformation Center engineer for Ingram Micro. Help support HPE servers, blade system storage, as well as Aruba networking technology solutions. In my videos, what I like to do is show you a slide from a popular PowerPoint and then demonstrate to you what that means within a management context. Today we're going to discuss Aruba Central, which can be found within the GreenLake platform. More specifically, we're going to be looking at Aruba Central as far as switch configurations. Now, I know my slide here says CX-based switches, but I'm going to look at the different configurations for CIOX as well as AOS-based switches within an environment. So there's a little bit difference within the UI. I'm going to do some common tasks such as create a link aggregation group, maybe create some VLANs, assign those to ports. I'm going to do that between each of these switches within our environment. So with all that being said, let's explore this management context. Okay, we're up in the GreenLake platform. So if you look at the cloud as being more of an experience and less of a destination, HPE's GreenLake platform presents that to you for your on-prem hardware. And that includes the cost model. I see the management for that within GreenLake Central, but it's also the day-to-day maintenance. So Compute Ops allows us to be able to cloud manage our on-prem client servers. Data Services Cloud Console allows us to do the same thing for HPE storage. And Aruba Central allows us to do that for HPE networking solutions. And HPE is the only vendor that I know that can manage a cross stack in this fashion. All right, so let's go inside Aruba Central. All right, as I click through these menus, if you find yourself getting a little bit lost, I do have some other videos around Aruba Central that might help you understand what's going on with this environment. As a real quick overview, it's important to understand what's over here, because that's going to make a difference as to what you see. Right now I'm looking at everything globally within our environment, but this can be a variety of things, and depending on what is up here, it can change what's listed down below, and then what I list down below can change my tabs across the top. So as I go through this, you can kind of see them changing a little bit. What can be up here? Well, certainly it could be groups, which I look at as more of a configuration context, but there certainly is some reporting within there. It could be sites, and it can also be labels. Right. We're going to be working with groups, and before I go dig into that, I want to kind of give you a kind of a level set for how we're going to do this demonstration. I'm going to go down to Tools here, and then I'm going to click Console. We're going to be working with switches today, and we're going to use our Aruba CX switch. I'm going to put in my credentials. And you can see I am logged into the switch, and I could do a good old-fashioned show run if I wanted to. All right, so my point here is I could certainly get to the console through the cloud-based management context. I don't need to be local and on-site to do that. But for our management capabilities, so I could show you things quickly, I do have PuTTY sessions into each of the switches we'll be managing today. And that's just so I can make changes and then show you something real quickly without necessarily changing the context of what we're looking at. All right, so let's start off and let's go down into our Business Transformation Center group here. And I'm going to go up to Devices. You can see this group manages access points as well as switches. If I select switches here, you can see that this manages both AOS switches as well as CX-based switches. So this is an AOS-based switch. So let's go into the config context for that. Now we're at a group level, so the idea with groups is you manage at a group level the similarities between all your devices, and then you can go into individual switches and override that configuration if you so choose to do so. It allows you to be able to have a consistency within your environment. All right, so for example, if I go under Interface and I look at the VLANs that exist, I really only have VLAN 86 set up in a group level. But if I look at the individual switch, and I do that by selecting List, because this would list all my devices in this group. All right, and I select my switch here. Notice this context changes to be just that switch. Again, I go to the same spot. You'll see I have a lot more VLANs configured on the switch itself. All right, so let's talk about some of the context that we'll see here. So I'll go over to ports, We'll select some port. I can select multiple ports if I wanted to. And then we can look at a little pencil icon to edit that. Right, we can go over to PoE. I know Power over Ethernet is important to people. And again, we could see the same type of thing, and I can make changes and then click OK and save those changes. Now, something that's important to note is trunk groups within an AOS switch is going to be related to link aggregation. So LACP and things like that. So that's something that's important to note. There isn't necessarily the concept of an access port or a trunk port or the naming of such in this environment. When you look at individual ports, they'll either have untagged VLANs or tagged VLANs associated with them. So if you wanted something to act like an access port, you just untag a VLAN on that port. And if you want to it to act like a traditional trunk port or a port that carries multiple VLANs, you tag the VLANs you'd want a part of that port as well. Again, trunk groups are LACP. I think another thing that's important to note on these switches, if you look at the config file of these switches, so I'll do a show run on this switch. The config file is VLAN based instead of something like an Aruba CX switch, which is interface based. So that's something that's another difference that you'd want to pay attention to within these environments. All right, so let's create a link aggregation in this environment. So I'm going to click the plus sign over here. I'm going to select one of these trunks. We're going to do 10 so I can make them consistent between each one. We're going to do LACP. What's going to be our untagged VLAN? So these are all the VLANs that are configured on the switch currently. So I'll use 80 as an untagged VLAN, and now I'll select my tagged VLAN. So that'll be 81 through 87. And I'll go over here and select the ports that I want to utilize. And again, I'll make them the same between each switches so we can see the configuration differences. So I'll use 18 and 20. Excuse me, 19 and 20. And then we'll leave DHC snooping the way it is, and I'll click OK, and I'll click Save. We go over here into our PuTTY session. We'll do a show run on the switch, and we'll see that that has been configured up here. All right, so let's do some other things. Let's create some VLANs and let's assign them to ports. So I'm going to go over to VLANs here. All right, we can see all the VLANs that we have configured right now. I'm going to click the plus sign here. We're going to make VLAN 184. I'll give it a name. We'll just call it VLAN 184. I'll turn off DHCP assignment. And we'll go down and we'll start picking the ports that we want to tag and untag. So first thing I'm going to do is go down to port 17, and I am going to untag that. We can see that shown up over here. And then this link aggregation group we just created, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to tag that so that traffic will make it through. So I'm going to click OK. Save the settings. Okay. I'm going to click the plus sign again. We'll do another one. I'll say this is going to be VLAN 185. Disable the DHCP IP address. And we'll take our trunk port again. I will tag that, and then we will go down to port 18, and I will untag that. And I'll click OK. And then save settings. Okay. I can scroll down to the bottom of this, and we'll see those changes that were made. Okay. Alright, so let's take a look and see if those have made it down to the switch yet. Scroll down to the VLANs. And we can see there's 184 and then there's 185. set up here. So we could certainly see that that has been configured correctly. Right, so that's some basic configuration within an AOS-based switches. I don't think there's anything that's too crazy here as you look through this. As far as configuration is concerned, if you needed to do radius, that'll be over here. Routing is up here. But let's move on to our Aruba CX based switch. So I have that switch in this group down here. We're still in the AOS context. I'm going to have to go over to the Aruba AOS-CX context. And I select that. You can see this is a completely different configuration context. So this is certainly different, but I don't think it's all that difficult. So let's do the same things we did on the AOS based switch. So we'll go into ports and link aggregation. Right, and over here I have a plus sign. Right, and I can add a link aggregation here. Now I have to specify a name because you see if I give it anything else besides lag and then a number. I think we used 10 before. That won't go through. We can pick our port members. So last time we did port 19. Oops, I flipped. And 20. So we'll use those. And then we'll select our VLAN mode, which we're going to do a trunk. In the native, I think we used 80 before. And then I could certainly do things like, 81 through 87, which is what we had tagged before. But why don't we do all? All right, so this way any VLANs that get created will get passed across this link aggregation. So I'm going to click Add. All right. And then we will go back. And now let's create some VLANs. So I'll go over to the VLANs. All right. Add a couple of them, so I'll add again 184. We'll click Add. We'll add another one, 185. And then we'll click Add on that. All right, and we can see those VLANs are down here. We'll go back. All right, let's go back to the ports. Now I don't need to do anything with the lag, the link aggregation, because I'm allowing all VLANs, and because I created those VLANs, I'll automatically get passed to these ports. But I need to do, as we did in the AOS switch, I need to do ports 17 and 18. So let's go down and do that. So 17, we'll edit this port. I certainly could change the access mode if I wanted to be an access to trunk. So these switches certainly do have that concept. And then we're just going to do access, and this will be 184. And I'll click Save. Then we'll go down to port 18. We'll add that. We'll do 185 here. And then we've configured each of these switches in a similar fashion. Now, both switches, you can look at to see if they've synchronized yet. You can do that in a couple different ways. Now, we configure this switch at a group level, so it's not going to have any overrides on it. But if I go look at config status, we'll see switches with override. We can see the switches synchronizing right now. If I looked at the list view, which shows all the switches in this environment, we can see it also says it's not in sync up here as well. Sometimes I find that the switch syncs a little quicker than I see within the management context, so let me go take a look at that. And we'll bring up our putty session here, and I'll do a show run. And then we'll see our VLANs are set up over here. And we can see our link aggregation is set up here. And if I go down to the interfaces, we will see that they have been set up accordingly with their VLANs. That's certainly a way you can configure, and that's similarities. Another nice thing about an AOS switch is you can do multi-edit, which will allow you to manage multiple switches at the same time. So I'm going to enable that. This is an interesting feature. I only have the one switch, but I could select multiple switches. We'll grab the one. You notice we see if one switch is selected, we can edit configuration here and say I wanted to change this to 86. Right, we could do that. And if I look below, we'll have a save. Right, and then that update will get pushed out to the switch as well. So you can see it's pushing right now. Now we could disable multi-edit. Now if I look under configuration status, now we do have a switch with the local override because we were configuring that switch individually with multi-edit. So that's something important to note. We could see that it's synchronized. So I'll go over here and we'll do another show run and we'll see that VLAN has been added. Alright, so that's the different ways you can configure HPE switches within Aruba Essential. So what we're looking at now is the CX-based switch configuration, the UI interface, and the first switch we looked at was AOS-based. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please stay tuned for more videos.